Hello, folks, and welcome back to So Yellow for Endo. It's our last live of the series. Hooray! It has been a fabulous month. It has been great seeing all of you guys sew some fabulous things. And I am here joined by the lovely Sofia, and we're going to talk about endometriosis experiences and fundraising, which is very suitable given it is the final week of So Yellow for Endo. While the Sewing Yellow may be complete, you are still able to donate if you would like to support So Yellow for Endo. So the Just Giving link is below. Please do support, and also if you didn't get a chance to get involved this year, do get involved next year and you can still donate and support us. So my little spiel is over. Sofia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Also, that sounds amazing that you're close to raising £4,000.
It's kind of insane. It's the third year of the challenge and the uptake has been incredible. We've got more sponsors than ever this year as well, which is so cool. But honestly, I've had a few messages from people who've said they learned about endometriosis in the first year, so 3 years ago, and they've now had their surgeries because they listened to this, found out they were like, oh, my experience is very similar to this. I'm going to go speak to my doctors. And there's a few people who've had successful surgeries. There's people who are now under a gynecologist. So we do good. We do good. And that's the most important thing.
Amazing.
But raising money for Endometriosis UK as well. We don't have much of a voice and they're really good for lobbying for a lot of change. So it's a big one to support. And I know something you've as well explored with your stuff.
Yeah, it was. I think it was really important to me realizing the exact same thing that you've just said. Like, you talk to so many people that go, oh, I have that. Oh, I thought that was just me. And I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but you should probably go see your gynecologist.
Well, exactly. Like, or the things where I think the statistic that literally like makes me cry is that women on average put off going to see a doctor about menstrual symptoms for like a year and a half because of menstrual shame. That's like the average amount of time people go, oh, it's fine. It's just my period, it's just this. It's the same experience. And you're like, you shouldn't be in agony. Like Laura, the Hungry Sewist who spoke to us on the 8th, and you can go and see that on Instagram, was talking about how her bleeding was so heavy that she was bleeding through a super tampon and a night pad and having to change that every hour.
Oh my God.
And they were like, you have a heavy period. And it's like, no, that's not normal.
I used to pass out every month at school and everyone was like, yep, just normal. That's just how it is. Like, the nurse knew me. She would come in and be like, oh, just lie down for the day.
Well, exactly. I should say as well, we went to school together. So there are going to be some things as well. Similarly, I got taken to the SAN and they were like, oh, we're going to take your appendix. Like, we'll take you to Dr. Gray's in the morning and get your appendix out if this doesn't go down. And then I woke up in the morning and I was like, oh, sorry, lads. My period started. Do you have any pads here?
Oh my God.
And that was like routine. Exactly the same as you. They'd know you.
Yeah.
And then, because I don't know if you got this, but I remember we had one of our nurses was amazing. And she was like, have you considered going on the pill just because I'm anecdotally like it can help? And I'm so glad because it made the last year of school easier, even though it then caused loads of problems later on. But at that point, it was nice to have someone go, this isn't super normal. And it's so hard to get that sort of but particularly, so we went to boarding school, and when you're in a house with lots of girls, there are a variety of period experiences, and it's hard to know what's normal and what's less normal. And it's hard as well if your period is quite different. It's hard to hold your hand up and be like, actually, mine is a lot more painful than this.
Because I do find, obviously, there's a lot of men that I speak to that just have like really only the most basic understanding of any type of women's health issue. But then what's almost worse for me is when you speak to women and they almost don't believe you because they're like, oh, well, my period doesn't hurt that much. And I'm like, yeah, but mine does. Like, I think it's easier for women to think that they understand because they have some kind of similar experience. But it really can be so different. And I find it more like hurtful when women don't get it.
I think so. And that's a big thing I try and push for in this challenge as well, is that if you are a woman watching, please accept your experience is not universal. Because I went to a GP, like all the GPs I've been to, it's been, rocky. But one of the worst was when I went to a female GP and she went, oh, well, my period's not that bad, so have some
Yeah.
mefenamic acid and get on with it. And you're like,
Yes.
what?
Oh my God. Okay, horror story. Don't let it put you
Uh-huh.
off going to the doctor. You should still
Yes.
go to the doctor. But I would say be emotionally prepared and believe in yourself, because the worst, she was an expert. She was a gynecologist expert in London, and she was so expensive to go to. And at this point, I'd already figured out I had endometriosis, and my gynecologist said I had endometriosis. And I went to this woman to be like, should I do the laparoscopy? And she basically said, no, you just need to get a new boyfriend.
What?
It
What?
was so horrible. She did an exam, like the internal exam. And normally, obviously, they do that and they're like, tell me where it hurts, tell me how you're feeling. I started telling her, like, oh, this is really sore. And she was like, I don't want to know what you think. And I was like, you're hurting me. Like, what? And it was
Oh my
obviously the
God.
tissue that they then removed. Like, it basically, it became so clear to me once I figured out that it was endometriosis. I was like, I know where in my body it is. I can
Yeah.
feel it. And so when someone's there that's an expert going, no, you actually just need to date someone new, I was like, what?
Which is it's insane. In 2021, there were
Yeah.
doctors who were still telling women to get pregnant to help their endometriosis.
I
And
got
you're
told
like,
that. I got
did
told that.
you?
I was like, I'm 24 years old. I don't want to get pregnant. Thanks. And
See,
also,
I
it would
got the
last like
opposite.
9 months.
Yeah. And then you're back. I mean,
Yeah.
I was 21 and they were like, well, we can just take your womb out. And I was like,
Oh, God.
what? Like that, we're not doing that now. He basically went,
Yeah.
either we'll take your room out or just shut up and get on with it. And I'm
My
really happy I
God.
had a different consultant in the same clinic. But
Yeah,
it's
I'm really glad that by the time I got to this woman, I already knew, because also the red flags went up really early in that appointment, because she said to me, endometriosis is when tissue from the womb leaves the womb and goes elsewhere. And I was like, no, it isn't. And so she
yeah.
like drew out this diagram and she was like, oh, it's impossible that it would be impacting your stomach because your stomach is so far away. I was like, people have endometriosis in their lungs.
I was going
So
to say it can go up to the. So we had on. If you want to learn more about the specifics of endometriosis, on the 14th of March we had Dr. Martin Hirsch come and talk to us about the NICE guidelines, diagnosis journeys, sort of, because he's a endometriosis consultant. So I would thoroughly recommend giving that a listen. Brilliant. I'll link it again below. But if you want to hear the other side, because I'm aware, particularly when we talk about endometriosis experiences, a lot of us have overwhelmingly negative experiences of engaging with consultants. And it's important to know, like Sofia said earlier, don't let it put you off, because there are some brilliant consultants out there.
yeah.
It's never a picnic, but there are some fabulous people. Like, even in my experience in the same clinic, I had one guy who, I'll just be honest, had a terrible bedside manner, who basically went, you can have your room out or you can't. There was
Oh
a
God.
registrar in that clinic who was fabulous, and I went to him in tears after trying like 6 different hormonal things. I was like, I literally, this was after a month, 6 weeks on the mini pill, where I'd thrown up every day, and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And he went, well,
Oh.
we'll just schedule you for surgery. And I went, oh, well, that was easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that with anybody else. So
Yeah, it's so
it really
funny.
does
Some
depend
people
who you
just get
get.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people
I
just
got,
go, like, let's deal with it then. You go, thank God.
yeah, I got really lucky actually, because I did. So I feel like when I was thinking about doing this, I was thinking, I don't know how useful my experience is in a sense, because basically for reasons of needing to get citizenship in the UK, I had to get private health insurance, because you have to prove you're not reliant on the NHS. And so
Oh,
I
I see.
had this
Okay.
whole time private health insurance, which really helped and sped things up. And even then I
Mhm.
had bad experiences within that, but at least, I am quite aware that I was very lucky compared to the average person. But even
Mhm.
like I got so lucky with my first gynecologist, because she basically immediately, I went in and I'd already read about endometriosis, and I was like, I don't want this doctor to think that I'm self-diagnosing. So I
Yeah.
said, look, here's my theory. This is why I think that, but obviously I'm open to your expertise. And she was like, no, I think you're right.
Which is brilliant though.
Yeah.
Actually, shall we dial it back slightly? What did your diagnosis journey look like? When
Okay,
when did
yes.
you start going, I need to speak to someone about this.
So I always had really heavy periods and I would throw up and I would pass out, but it was always dismissed as like, that's just how it is for you. In my family, nobody else has it that badly. And so I
Mhm.
don't know, doctors always just said it was normal. And
Uh-huh.
that was, I would say, manageable. Oh my God, when I got to the UK and I found out about cocodamol, that was a life-changing experience. So it was manageable. It was,
Yeah.
a bit terrible for a couple days a month, but generally okay. And then in like 2 months before COVID hit, I went skiing that January. And I
Yeah.
had been feeling worse and worse, but I didn't really realize until I skied for 2 days. Then I had to take a full day off and just lie in bed at this hotel. And it was so horrible. All I could do was lie in bed, and then I would have to get up because I would have to throw up and then just go back to bed. And it was like from pain or from exhaustion or fatigue or
Yeah.
something. And I remember all I could eat was carrots. And I was in this hotel in Switzerland and I called down to the front desk to be like, could I please have some just like chopped carrots? And they didn't understand what I was saying at all. This guy turned up at
Oh,
my door with just like one enormous peeled carrot on a plate. I had to nibble it like a bunny. It was horrible. But I
I
remember
shouldn't laugh,
then,
but it's quite
yeah,
funny. Um, but that
yeah,
point,
that
yeah.
was really the moment that I was like, okay, something is wrong. But all of my symptoms, because I was kind of ignoring the period symptoms as separate, and also at that point I was on the pill which completely stopped my periods, so that was basically resolved.
Right.
um
Okay.
and all of my symptoms were digestive, so I thought I just had some kind of digestive issue, and for ages so did all of my doctors. So
Yeah.
I did the low FODMAP diet, which is like the most, you exclude almost everything from your diet to try and figure out if you have any triggers. I did it
Mm.
for like 3 months and I was like, I feel the same. None of these
Yeah.
foods are impacting me. Um, and then I think I just started reading around because really, and I've always struggled with this, so many of the treatments for endometriosis seem to be about the pain. And I was like, the pain I can deal with. What I can't deal with is like constant nausea. I could not wear trousers. I got really into Lucy and Yak dungarees because I was like, I can't button anything around my
I think
stomach.
I remember your dungaree phase, like on
Yeah,
Instagram. I feel like I remember this.
it was
But yeah,
huge.
like
And
it's
it
just the
was,
bloating and everything as well.
yeah, it was fully like a practical decision. And I remember going to the doctor and being like, I know this is a really niche symptom, but something is really wrong that I can't wear trousers.
Yeah.
Um,
That should be quite a big red flag if I physically cannot
mm,
button anything over my stomach. Like
yeah.
that's really bad.
Yeah, I just think the problem is that my symptoms were so general. Like I also had this huge fatigue that I would have days where I couldn't get out of bed. I would have days where I would have to decide whether to like get up to eat or have a shower. And I was really lucky that I was with my ex at the time and he was just completely looking after me for like 2 straight years. Because honestly, I remember thinking at the time, like, I don't know what I would have done. I think I would have just had to go and live with my parents again because
Yeah.
I was incapable of looking after myself in any meaningful way.
And it's the thing is that isn't talked about enough. So in a slightly different way, I had the same experience for 18 months between, well, really for a couple of years. Adam, in the lead up to my surgery, because I was on that waiting list for so
Mm,
long. Um, it was getting to the point where 3 weeks out of 4, I was in agony. And I
yeah.
couldn't really, it was, and now I know it's because it was on some of the ligaments in my leg, but I would collapse, like I wouldn't be able to stand. And it was like in my hip joint. It was around there, and it
Oh
was sort of
God.
the ligaments going into there. And I was like, why is my leg buzzing? This is so weird. But I like wouldn't be able to stand. I would be throwing up all the time. Like from no one talks about morning sickness, and it's not. They only talk about it in pregnancy, but actually,
Yeah.
anytime your hormones are off, it can happen. And it's a bit of a
Mm,
default for me, and I imagine it's quite similar for you, where you're like, yay, nausea. This is good.
yeah.
Okay, this is where we are.
Yeah.
Um, but it was stuff like that where I don't know, without Adam in the house, I wouldn't have been able to eat or like feed myself. Or I
Yeah.
remember him washing my hair because I couldn't stand.
Yeah.
Like,
We put a garden chair in the shower.
But stuff like this people don't talk about. They think of it as a bad period, and you're like, no, it affects your
Yeah.
whole life and your
Yeah.
relationships. And like the other thing, if you are watching and you don't know some of the main symptoms, so a lot of the stuff Sophia's talked about, endometriosis is often misdiagnosed as IBS. So
Yeah.
that's a big one. The other stuff is pain with sex, which if you go with just that symptom, a lot of people are like, have you considered, these sort of things? And you're like, oh, no. And then when you find out it's because you have endometriosis and like your infuriatingly named pouch of Douglas, which is between the back of your like vagina and uterus and your rectum. It's like a little weird little just cul-de-sac. Having it there can cause loads of pain with sex, pain with going to the loo, problems with bowels. Like your pelvic cavity is really important for just being alive. And it can affect anywhere in that area. So it might affect pain with sex, it might affect you. And for me, I had it all over my bladder. So it used to be agonizing when I needed the loo. Like if my bladder got too full, I'd be like, it'd be like knives. I'm like, but then they kind of go, oh, well, maybe you're not drinking enough water. And you go, I assure you, that's not the problem here. So what I'm trying to say is there is no one endometriosis look. It's quite pervasive.
Yeah. But then it's so interesting because I feel like to people that have it or know it well, it's instantly recognizable. Like, although the symptoms are quite weird and random, some of them are so specific that you're like, oh, I'm sorry, you have endometriosis.
Yeah, exactly. Some of them, when you do know it, you're like, that's what that looks like. And if you're lucky, like one of my favorite people in my diagnosis journey was my pelvic pain nurse. She was a right laugh. She was brilliant. Fantastic tiny Filipino nurse. Basically kept all these consultants in check. She was fabulous. And her office was covered in pictures of wombs. It was really fun.
Really?
She was she was brilliant. And she was the kind of person who she was on the pain hotline where you'd call her in this clinic and be like, I'm in agony. And she was the only person I think who's ever made me feel believed about the level of pain I was in. Because I don't know if you experience this, people go, you can't be in that much pain. And you go, oh, but I can. And I am.
Yeah, my problem is I'm really good with pain. And I never really knew, but I remember I broke my leg. And the reason that I think I'm really good with pain, by the way, is because I had so much of it for so many years growing up that I'm just like, oh, this is normal. Like I broke my leg and it didn't pierce the skin, but you could see that the leg was broken. And we went to hospital and I just sort of hobbled in and I was like, oh, hey, I think my leg is broken. And a nurse looked at it and was like, oh my God, sit down. I'm bringing you morphine. And I was like, it's fine. Take your time. It's fine.
But that's the thing. When I got my appendix out, I thought it was period pain for like a good couple of hours. And then I'd taken everything and I was like, oh no, I'm screaming. And I'm in an ambulance with gas and air. And they were like, we think it's this. I was like, it could be a period though. I'm not ruling it out. But that's insane. The fact you're going to hospital hobbling in with a broken leg and it's still in your head. Do you do that thing where you're like, well, it's not as bad as this?
Yeah. And I remember when I went in, there was this guy that had clearly cut his toe. Sorry if anyone's squeamish. He'd cut his toe. He had this baseball cap full of tissues and just his bleeding toe. And I remember looking over and being like, it was a Sunday evening. And I was like, I can't be screaming in pain right now. Everyone else here is struggling. I'm going to sit quietly. So I just sort of sat there and whimpered a little bit.
But that's insane. And this is a statistic as well that I found last year. So last year I wrote a big article on women's health inequalities, not just for gynecology, but for everything. Women are less likely to receive CPR, but women on average wait longer than men for pain relief in hospitals. It's 4 times longer they wait for the same conditions. And I think part of this is because as a woman, we have different pain thresholds. That is a thing. But also, I think women feel differently about exhibiting pain because people expect you to be screaming. And if you're not, they don't think you're in as much pain as you are, which is very frustrating when you're not somebody who, the last time I screamed with pain was when I had kidney stones, and that was at home. Even in hospital, I was like, it's not comfortable, but I don't want to be shrieking because, as you say, you look around you in A&E.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's people with limbs hanging off.
Yeah.
You know, I've got to wait my turn here, really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what
I think
happened then? Oh, sorry.
oops. No, go ahead.
I was going to say what happened sort of, you're in this phase, you're speaking to
Mhm.
the doctor, it's sort of IBS. What was the moment at which, was it seeing that first gynecologist and saying, I think I have endometriosis? Was that your big trigger?
Yeah, and actually that one I ended up having to just book myself and pay for myself because I kept asking for a referral and they were like, "No, you're fine, you have IBS." And I was like, "I promise you I do not have IBS."
That's
And
insane.
yeah. So I ended up having to pay and I'm so glad that I did because yeah, as soon as I saw her 10 minutes in, she did all her exams and she was like, "Yeah, basically I think you have it." And then honestly after that, I was basically really lucky the whole time because then it also one of my cousins is a gynecologist. She's now actually in Norway, but she used to be in London and she like trained in the UK. And
Okay.
so I actually ended up having a call with her and talking to her and saying, you know, I'm having these issues I've seen because I'd seen some specialists and they'd been like, "Oh no, you're fine." Like the one that said you need a new boyfriend. Um, and that was because I said I was having pain in sex, and she was like, "Oh, well, you probably just don't like him that much." I was like, "All right, that's not
That
it."
is the most inappropriate thing to
I
say to
know,
a patient in the world.
I know.
You cannot go with gynecological pain and someone tells you to get a new boyfriend. Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. It was really, yeah. I mean, it was just a waste, that whole appointment. But yeah, I ended up having this call with my cousin, and she actually recommended someone in London. I wish that I could remember his name, but I can't. Um, and I went in and I had a scan of some kind. I can't remember, but it is the one where they look for fluid in the pouch of Douglas because that's one of
Right.
the most sort of straightforward ways to
Is it
tell.
is it this sort of the internal one
Yeah,
with
yeah,
a sort
yeah.
of,
It's
yeah.
internal and external.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've had one of these, and it's like an intravaginal ultrasound or something, and they
Yeah.
use it for pregnancy as well. They sort of put it in and
Mm,
like twist it slightly and turn around. So, which
yeah.
is worth asking for if you're in a hospital that has that, because most antenatal clinics do have it. So,
Yeah.
little top tip for anyone who's struggling to get the correct scans. It does help.
Yeah. And it's difficult because I remember having that, and that was with like a really good doctor in London. And even then, he sort of said, "I think you have it, and I think you should have the surgery, but we don't know until we're kind of in there."
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but I was like, at that point, the thing is, this was over a period of 2 years, and I was deteriorating so much because this started I want to say halfway through my master's, so like the January of my master's. Then I finished my master's fine, but after that, it got to the point where I was like, I can't get a job because I can't leave the house. Like I can't even walk the dog. How am I supposed to get a
Mm,
job? And it was really difficult because I feel like because of the symptoms, there's no way to prove if your leg is broken, you can see it's broken. And if
yeah,
like someone has asthma, you can kind of hear it sometimes. They have an inhaler. Like
yeah,
some other health conditions are more visible. Endometriosis is like completely invisible, and people just
yeah,
have to believe you. And as you say, like what you say kind of sounds exaggerated.
yeah,
And so I was really struggling at the time with quite a few people in my life being like, "Oh, well, maybe if you had a job, you would feel better." And like, maybe you're just struggling mentally. And I was like, I am struggling
yeah.
mentally because I'm struggling physically.
Yeah, because the thing is, it really, it wears you down.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm very lucky because they found mine when I had my appendix out, because they
Oh,
video a
really?
laparoscopy. Yeah. So I'd been in agony for years and basically told to crack on, try the coil, try this, try that. I got my
Yeah.
appendix out, and on the letter from the surgeon, it's like, oh, also she has endometriosis, refer her to this. And
Oh
even
my
then, it was
God.
18 months, 2 years till I got surgery. But
Yeah.
at least I literally had photos. I could be like, it's there. And that's only what they saw on the way to my appendix. So it was
Oh
easier.
God.
Half the battle in endometriosis is being believed.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to have this bit. I was like, I have it. I know I have
Yeah.
it. Can we? And even then, though, it was so hard to get anyone to actually act on it because we got the old
Yeah.
lovely gentleman told me to get my womb out. But
Do you
still,
know what
still angry.
I remember so clearly now that you've said that, that going into that surgery, all I was thinking was, yeah, I want to feel better. But I remember having this thought of like, what if they say they didn't find anything? Like, what will I do then? Because if it's not this, then I have no idea. I was
Yeah, I don't
convinced
know
it
what to
was,
do
and
now.
my worst fear was that they would say, nope, didn't find any endometriosis.
Which is, it's insane though that that's sort of, because I know somebody who had that experience. I won't name her because privacy, but I
Really?
know somebody who went in for the surgery, they found nothing, and
Oh
then
God.
she had to go forward with I don't know where she got to, but I think it's something along the lines of chronic fatigue. I don't know. It's something along that. But she had
Yeah.
that surgery and she came out and was like, that,
Oh
yeah,
God.
nothing, which is to me seems like the worst thing in the world, because at least
Yeah.
once you know what it is, you know what it is, and you can
Yeah.
pursue the right thing for you.
Yeah, and then you sort of have the piece of paper and you can be like, look, I was right this whole time. Like, I knew
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you need that, particularly to access decent GP care. You need something from
Mm,
your consultant. I mean, even like for my asthma, I've had to have my consultant write to my GP to say, stop prescribing her amoxicillin. It does nothing. Please stop. And now they will, because they've said, please, my consultant has basically written from on high. When you have gynecological stuff, having a consultant there to go, no, they need these painkillers. No, you have
yeah.
to prescribe them this. It makes your life a lot easier, because
Yeah.
sometimes GPs are lovely, but it's not their area of expertise. And it can
Yeah.
be a bit of a lottery, particularly
Yeah.
renewing things like pain prescriptions and that. It can be quite hard.
Yeah.
So, in your surgery, can I ask, where was it successful? Was it diagnostic, or did you have another one to take it out? What was your sort of surgery journey?
So it was, well, we were pretty convinced that I had it. So it was diagnostic, but I also was like, if you find it though, please remove
Take
it.
it out.
We had to have the
Yeah.
conversation on like, how far would you go? Like, how much would you remove? But I actually got really lucky there as well, because I didn't have any deep infiltrating endometriosis. And so they
Mm,
were able to remove basically all of it.
yeah.
And it was like, I don't know how to describe. I woke up and immediately was like, it's fixed. Like,
Yeah.
even though I was so high on all the painkillers, they gave me so much anesthesia at that time. It took me like 8 full hours to wake up. And I remember the nurses telling me off because I physically couldn't make my mouth use the straw to drink water. And they were like, you need to drink water so that you can leave. And I was like, I can't. I'm physically
Yeah.
unable to.
Which is
But
insane, because I had loads of issues with my anesthesia. I woke up throwing up and fitting, and they had to resedate me. I was
really?
there. I was there overnight. It's meant to be like a day surgery.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
came
Mine
out of surgery
was.
at like 4 in the afternoon, and I had to leave the following day because I threw up for 8 hours. But
Oh
I
God.
remember waking up in recovery, and I was like fitting, and like they
Yeah.
resedated me and stuff. So I'm kind of jealous, because as well, someone else we went to school with had an operation to remove an ovarian cyst. She was high as anything afterwards. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
Like
I've
the amount
had
of pain relief.
I've now had 4 surgeries, but the other ones were like for when I broke my leg and stuff. And all of the other ones, I'd already had 3 at this point. So I was like, oh, I know how this goes. I'll be fine. For some reason, this was really different. Like normally I wake up, I'm kind of high, I sleep for half an hour, and then I'm good. This
Yeah.
one was, it was pretty hard. Like I also think that it was about 4 or 5, and I was supposed to leave at 8, and I left at like midnight.
Oh wow.
But at
So it's
least I
still a
left.
much longer. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember after mine waking up, and I was literally, because mine was done in a private hospital, but it was NHS. I've been on the waiting list so long that it
Mm.
was done by my NHS surgeon, but he also has cases
Yeah.
because they just didn't have any beds. So I'm really glad, because I had 4 nurses around me, because and my
Yeah.
family have a thing where we're not great with general anesthetic. Like my sister can't process it.
Really.
So I'm always a bit weird.
Yeah.
But I remember being there, throwing up, having someone putting ice on me, and my wonderful partner reading out my post-operative letter, because it was Friday and my surgeon had gone home.
Oh
It was a
God.
Friday night. My surgeon had just gone home and left a letter. He was brilliant, to be fair. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
But Adam is reading this letter going, did you know you had grossly normal fallopian tubes? And I'm like, shut up, I'm throwing up. Like, what's...
Do you know what? I actually also remember the surgeon coming in to like debrief me, and he was talking, and I had my surgery during COVID, so nobody could be there
Okay,
with me. And he was
right.
telling me what they found, and I was like, I'm not processing anything that you're saying right now. So when you ask where it
Yeah.
was, I don't I know like in my own body where it was, but I don't know that I can describe it. There was definitely some around my stomach, which is why I was having the digestive issues, but there was also some like kind of like, I don't know if everyone has the same incisions, but I have incisions like below my belly button, maybe like 5 centimeters down. And right where that is basically where it used to hurt. And even now, if it ever hurts, it's like right there. It's so weird also. I've never actually asked anyone about this, but I find if my symptoms are flaring up, all of my incisions are raised. I don't know why.
Oh,
There's like
that's
a
so
bump.
weird.
I know.
So I would love to know actually in the comments if anyone has had that, because for me, I have been pretty much symptom free since my surgery because they got
Yeah.
everything. But we just have to obviously keep an eye on it and everything. But my incisions are my belly button, which is great because the person who did my appendix did not put it back right. So after this one, it's now really neat again, which is lovely.
Nice.
So thanks, guys. And then I have one really low down, like on the line of my underwear,
Yeah, same, yeah.
which is, and it's lower. So I had one from my appendix that's there, and it's about that much lower. So I have one
Okay.
there, but then I had so much on my bladder again. That makes sense. And then I
Yeah.
had one to my side, which is like a cross, and then I have two other ones that are like almost above my hip bones because they suspended my ovaries because I had a lot on my
Uh,
left ovary. So I won't just talk about it. I had some really long strings that came out of my stomach and they were like holding my ovaries up so they didn't adhere to anything. And I had gel
oh
everywhere.
God.
And then the problem was it was the summer, it was like June, and I had really bad hay fever. And I sneezed and I felt my ovaries move when I sneezed. It was one of the grossest things. I have to say, my recovery got a lot speedier once those were taken out because I could
Yeah.
move my abs again without it was just
Oh my
it
God.
wasn't sore, it was just gross. You
The
know.
abs was the worst. Like, I can't imagine. Because then I was talking to someone about it and they were like, yeah, it's basically like a small part of a C-section. But it really
Yeah.
is like after the surgery, yeah, it took me 8 hours to recover, whatever. But then I immediately felt like basically fine. And as you say, all of my symptoms were gone. I suddenly had like all this energy, but you have to move really slowly because your abs like don't work. They're all
No, they
floppy
don't.
and they're like detached from your body. It's really horrible.
Yeah, it's really nasty. And actually, I'd be interested to see. So for me, I felt horrific afterwards, but my first period was terrible, and then everything got a lot better because I
Yeah.
used to be in so much pain constantly. I used to get a lot of ovulation pain as well. That all went, which was
Yeah.
brilliant. But after your surgery, did you have to give yourself the injections? Because they surprised me with this. I woke up on the Saturday,
Hmm.
and she was like, "Here's your sharps box," and I was like, "Why do I have a sharps box?" And I
Yeah.
had to give myself injections for a week.
Do you
I
know
don't know
what?
if
I
you had this or
assume
not.
so. I'd broken my leg previously and had to have those for like 3 months.
Mm,
And I can't do needles at all.
right.
So my partner was already doing those for me. So it's very possible that I did, but I think at that point I would have been like, right, here we go.
Just whatever. So I did them
Yeah.
myself because my partner's terrible with needles.
Oh,
And now I
really?
don't, yeah, she was like, "Oh yeah, your boyfriend can do them." And I looked at him and I was like, "He's already great. I'll do them. It's fine."
Yeah.
And I remember the first time being sat there like, I've just got to do it. And then after a week, I was like, but I had no space to do them. I don't know how much bandaging
Yeah.
you had after your surgery, but I had literally about this much of a strip either side of my stomach visible, and everything else was
Yeah.
like packed.
I do remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I don't
funny.
know. I
I don't
think
know how much information did you get about recovering from your surgery? Because I got almost none, but I don't know if everyone's different of what they get.
I definitely got some kind of leaflet. But honestly, I feel like I remember thinking it was basically presented to me like for the first week, you sort of go on like quick little tiny walks. And then other than that, do whatever you want as soon as you feel up to it. And I think I pretty much did just kind of feel my way through recovery.
So I think I had to get time off work and they were like,
Mm.
"How long will you be?" And I was like, "Well, a minimum of 6 weeks, but it could be 3 months if it turns into a full open
Oh my God,
scenario."
yeah.
Because
Actually, now
that
that you say
never
that,
sends
I
it.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, because they go, "This could happen and you won't know till you wake up." So, how have you found life post surgery? What have you noticed? How do you feel in yourself?
So it's varied for me, I would say. In general, completely life-changing. So glad I did it. I'm relatively certain I'll have to do it again at some point, and I absolutely will.
Yeah, me too.
I remember the instant relief of just like, oh my God, this has worked. 100% this has worked, and I know it. And even before the surgeon came in and, we found it here and here and removed it, I was like, yeah, they've done something.
Yeah.
So that was great. Then I can't say that I remember like like you said your first period after surgery was bad. I don't remember that really, to be honest.
Mhm.
But it might have been. I don't know. I do remember for the next
Yeah.
sort of 3 to 6 months, I was kind of thinking like, because I think it kept getting better, and I was like, oh, where is this going to end? Like, where is this going? And
Yeah.
then I would say since it's been 2 years now, 1.5, not that long. I don't know, maybe 2 years. And it has been stable generally, but it does fluctuate. Like I do still get some symptoms. I mean, I now have a full-time job, and I don't tend to have to take time off from it because of endometriosis. Like sometimes I'll
Which is
have to work
brilliant.
from home. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it's amazing the fact that I can do that, because if you told me that 3 years ago, I would have been like, ha, I don't believe you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think sometimes the changes are different per person, but the
Mm,
milestones for you suddenly, like, I don't know if you get this, sometimes you're like, oh, it's changed a bit. And then you go, oh, no, actually, if I think about this properly, my life is completely different
yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah, which is amazing. I definitely still get pain, and I don't feel like I'm back to who I was before I started feeling the symptoms. Like the
Uh-huh.
energy levels that I used to have, I definitely don't have anymore. And I
Yeah.
don't think that I've sort of stopped trying to achieve that, because I don't think it's doable.
Well, it's also, I, I don't know if I don't think I've ever talked about this actually publicly. I had, my surgery was amazing. It did change everything. But there was some stuff where my body was different.
Mm,
So take pain with sex, for example. There are areas of my body where I just didn't have nerves anymore from being years in pain. And one big recommendation I'd make
really?
is I had a year of pelvic physio, which you can have on the NHS. And
Yeah.
that has been life changing. Genuinely. So things like, I'm going to be graphic as anything right now, and
It's
I don't
fine.
care. Um, I'd had endometriosis on my bladder. So
Mm,
when that was cut away, I have scarring on my bladder. And also, my bladder is able to fill more than it used to, because for ages, the endometriosis has been a buffer. So now
yeah.
my bladder can overfill. And that was a real problem where I'd be like, my bladder would get too full, and then my scars would pull. And then it would be like, oh, this is agony. But I didn't know that's what it was. Equally, same with my bowel, same problems.
Yeah.
Um, there were other issues like around sort of nerve sensation and sort of nothing or pain. Pelvic physio
Mm,
helped massively. But I did, like 3 years after my surgery, I had a little bit of a cry. And when my body is not going to, I have to stop chasing what I was like before this all kicked off, because it's not
yeah.
healthy. I've got to learn to live in the body I've got now and be really happy it's not in agony all the time. But it's a weird
Yeah.
feeling, isn't it? Where you sort of have to go, whilst I am not that anymore, I can still be, but it will just be different or
Yeah.
something else. Or,
Yeah.
and that is not something people talk about a lot. And I think it would be good if we did,
Yeah.
because you've had a massive surgery. Like, that's going to be different.
Yeah.
And, you won't be in
Yeah.
agony, hopefully, which is nice. But like a lady we had who spoke, Kim, who spoke last year and the year before, had a full hysterectomy. And
Mm.
she said, similar to you, when she woke up, she just knew it was better, because it was like stuck to, she had like 9 centimeters, I want to say, of her bowel removed as well, because it was like stuck
Oh
together. It was a
God.
whole thing. Um, but she now has to live with like enforced menopause, which maybe
Mm.
her body wasn't ready for, and she's like, it's just living in a different way.
Yeah.
We're all pretty epic, really, with endometriosis. The stuff we have to deal with is kind of insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you found, are your period? I'm going to be just invasive now. Are your periods different post surgery? Like, has
Yes.
anything changed?
Yeah, I have way less pain. I still bleed quite a lot, but it's definitely
Mhm.
more manageable. But honestly, I do think I was on the pill for 3 years, and then the reason that I stopped the pill was because I thought I had endometriosis, and because I'd been on it for 3 years and I didn't have any periods, there was no way to know where in my cycle I was. So I was like,
Yeah.
right, I'm going to take this into my own hands and see if there's a correlation, and there very clearly was.
Uh-huh.
And now, just recently, maybe like 8 months ago, I went back on the pill, the same one.
Okay.
And it's been interesting because there's a part of me that's like a little bit scared to lose that knowledge of where I am in my cycle.
Uh-huh.
But I also think that now, if I feel weird or if I'm in pain or whatever, I do know what it's from. So
Yeah.
hopefully I won't feel the same like uncertainty. Because I used to be
Mhm.
like, I just feel weird. I don't know why I feel weird.
And that
Um,
makes you feel worse in some ways because you go, why do I feel like this? Or
yeah,
like,
and you're
what
like, am I
force is causing this?
overreacting? Like,
Yeah. And particularly, so I think it's interesting. So I saw this in my comments recently. A lot of people post surgery, they tend to tell you to go back on the pill to like inhibit
hmm
regrowth. I'm not on anything hormonal because I did
hmm
9 months after my surgery being on the pill. And then migraines and constant crying, and the migraines getting really bad. So they were like I was on, I couldn't see very well, and they were like, "You have to come off this now." So I've not
yeah.
been on anything hormonal, and for me, I love that knowledge of my cycle. I find I'm just happier, and I'm willing to
Mm,
take the pain, which is quite bad. But I know then I will need that surgery again. Like I
yeah.
know I will, but you have to find what works for you. And like as you say, if you're on the pill, but you start feeling that way, you know kind of what
Yeah.
to do, or at least
Yeah.
like it's not an unknown. It's
Yeah.
frustrating, but it's
Yeah.
known.
Yeah. And
So
do you know
can
what?
we
All the lack of
obviously
options annoys me so much because I'm mostly on the well, I'm on the pill for multiple reasons. One is that I find periods really annoying and I know that this pill will stop them. And so I'm like, right, well, that sounds nice. Then I don't
yeah,
have to deal
exactly.
with it. This is kind of my only option. Like I don't particularly want to be on the pill. It's just the best of the options that I have.
Yeah. It's the best of what's available.
Yeah.
Um and even then it's kind of frustrating because
Yeah.
there are a number of there are a number of angles you can look at this from. And the thing is, if I know plenty of women who are like, I'm happy on the pill, it works for me. And
Mm.
that is brilliant. I think I was on it for I was on like 5 different pills in my first couple of years of uni
Mm.
because periods would vanish. Then I'd have like a month-long period, and I'd be like, what the hell is this? And then there would be lots of cry.
Mm.
Like, I don't do well with hormonal intervention, but I think everyone has to make the choice that works for them. So if it's like,
Yeah.
it's being on it's better for me than not being on it. Or like
Yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of being off it for a variety of reasons, like you have that sense of security when you're on it that you're not
Yeah.
most likely not going to get accidentally pregnant. But for me,
Yeah.
it was the crying and the lack of libido and the throwing up and the migraines. And I
Yeah.
was like, I just don't like me on it
Mm-hmm.
and I don't feel myself. But
Yeah.
then it's so hard, particularly with endometriosis. One of the big things to realize is that a lot of people will tell you to be on the pill. You do not have to be if
Yeah.
it doesn't work for you. But equally, if it does
Yeah.
work for you, fill your
Yeah.
boots and try lots of different
Yeah.
pills. That would be a
Yes.
big piece of advice.
Also, I think for me, what frustrates me is that so much of I was reading recently, I'm sure you've read about there's like a new study and some new medication that they're like, oh, this is really great for endometriosis. And I hope that it is. And it does sound promising. But it frustrates me that whenever you read those articles, it only focuses on the pain. And I'm like, I don't, like the number of times I try to say to doctors, I don't care about the pain. I don't
Yeah.
feel like me. I can't do stuff. I can't eat. I feel nauseous all the
Yeah.
time. And I can't wear trousers. I was like,
But
you need to fix the
that's huge.
fatigue.
Well, it's also the big one. I don't know if you've experienced this. Is a huge amount of endometriosis care is fertility based. A lot of it is, do you
Mm,
want kids or don't you? And you're like,
yeah.
I don't think whether it's the pain or it's the inability to wear trousers, which is mental,
Yeah.
or it's constant fatigue or it's nausea or it's whatever it is, that should be treated. We
Yeah.
shouldn't, there is an assumption. about what we are being treated for when you go for endometriosis treatment. And I think that's
Mm.
wrong, because we need to look at what people actually need. Because, for
Yeah.
example, asking me at 21, well, do you want kids or don't you? I don't know, but I'd quite like the choice. Like,
Yeah.
and that's not
Yeah.
why I'm here. I'm here because I can't stand up 3 weeks out of 4.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like, and I'm sure you felt the same, you're banging your head against the wall going, that's not the problem. This is, and I
Yes.
need your help with the thing I've come to you about.
Yeah. I've
Not trying to
literally,
treat you
I've
for something I
just,
don't care about.
I've just realized anecdotally, I ended up well, I still have some bloating issues sometimes. I would say that now I have like one bad day a month. It used to be
Okay.
like I would have 3 good days a month.
Right.
And
Okay.
even my bad day is nowhere near as bad as it used to be. But I
Mhm.
do have on all of my trousers, I'm gonna get up and show you. I've had to add 2 buttons. I buy them bigger and then I add a button so that I can make them smaller for every day. But then I like have the option and it looks like that.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing.
And
Oh
that's
my
part of the
God.
like sewing
I
thrifty alterations thing.
can you do me a favor? Can you share a photo of that I can share on my Instagram as a part of the
Yes.
promo for this? Because I know so many people who will just go, that's a brilliant idea. Because
Yeah.
endo bloat is a huge thing. I mean, I'm quite
Yeah.
lucky. I don't get it that badly. I get, again, we're on the TMI train really heavily here, and I do not care. I still get quite bad constipation around ovulation,
Mm.
and I can't have anything on my lower back. So I have a
Oh.
fantastic wardrobe of dresses, and I pull my tights up to like my ribs so there's no pressure on my stomach,
Yeah.
or you roll them right down to under your hip bones. But
Yeah.
I have so many dresses I've made now so that I can put them on and there's no pressure at all anywhere on my
Mm.
stomach, my back, like, and it's weird, and things like that where you just go, I've now had to adapt my life to this. You're like, why have I done this? Or I get full periods now. That's a big change for me. I used
Yeah.
to get agonizing period pains and then like a 2-day period, but I'd get period
Really?
pain for like 3 or 4 days before, and that would be the worst thing in the world. Like, I couldn't function. Whereas
Yeah.
now I get an actual, like, a 4-day period and no pain until it starts. And I'm like, this is what other people have. This is
Yeah.
so weird. But I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know. It's a lot heavier as well. Like, I'm looking into like what's the word? I'm getting a blood test to see if there's like my iron levels are all right, because I
Oh
do
yeah.
seem to be a lot more exhausted. But then they did say
Mm.
you've never really had a proper period. Like, you haven't had the amount of bleeding externally that you should have
Yeah.
for most of your adult life. So
Yeah.
this is a change. Now,
Yeah.
one thing as well we wanted to talk about today was your epic fundraising. For
Yeah.
those of you who don't know, Sophia is incredible and shaved her head to raise money for endometriosis. How much did you raise in the end?
I wish I could remember off by heart. It was 500 and something pounds, I think.
Which is awesome. And you also
Yeah.
looked incredible with a shaved head. Can I just say, like, she looked beyond stylish. It was incredible. I was like, I would never look like that at all.
I
But
loved it.
what an incredible thing to do. How did you get to that decision that you were going to decide to do that? Like, did you wake up and just go, I'm going to shave my head?
Well, if I'm honest, it was a slightly selfish decision in the sense that I'd always wanted to shave my head.
Okay.
And part of me wanted like a reason to do it, I guess. I was like, oh, I'll do it at some point. And then basically my initial thought was that I would do the typical like cut your hair, donate your hair. And then basically my hair wasn't long enough to do that. And I wasn't willing to wait for it to grow long enough to do that. And then
Mhm.
I basically had a brainwave where I was like, oh, here's this thing I really care about and that like other people need help with and that would have directly impacted my experience. And so I thought, yeah, bit random, but I'm going to shave my head for Endometriosis UK. And I think I said it like a month out or something because I really
Mhm.
wanted to have the opportunity to share my story because I felt like I'd kind of got to a turning point. I'd had my surgery, it had worked. I was like really keen to share on a personal level because I was like, hey, look, this happened to me. It's really important that you know about it. Because I was
Yes.
like basically disappeared from everyone's lives for 2 years. So I was like,
Mhm.
I'm ready to share
This is
why
what's been
now.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, I was just like, I feel like this is outrageous enough that people would probably actually donate to see it happen.
And the thing is, I mean, we all did. It was brilliant. And I think it's funny why you come to fundraising, because for me, I was sick and tired of people telling me it wasn't appropriate to talk about periods. When I was like, 1 in 10
Mm,
women have endometriosis. And part of the reason they're waiting 8 years to be diagnosed is because you don't let
yeah,
them talk about periods. And I talked about endometriosis on my stories, just casually. I was like, oh, I'm doing this. I got 3
yeah,
messages going, what on earth is that? I got 2 going, I have it. And I got 2
yeah,
going, you shouldn't be talking about that. And I went, right, absolutely
yeah,
not. But it's funny where that sort of comes from, because I do remember you disappearing, like
yeah,
just vanishing, because from the sewing space, like, and I remember talking to
yeah.
Holly, and Holly was like, she's going through a lot. So when you shared it, I was like, oh my God. And also I was at that point, I was like, we have to talk about this because
Yeah,
it's brilliant to talk about.
yeah.
Um, but I think you were incredibly brave though to do that. I would not. I do so many things to my hair, but shaving it off is not happening. Um, unless I start
Yeah.
going bald, and I'll embrace it. But like, it's
Yeah.
I'm astonished. Like, it was so cool, and you raised so much money. It was
Yeah.
amazing. Like, honestly, did you feel like when you did share your story with everyone, was it quite
Mm.
liberating to just
Yeah,
go,
and I
here it
think
is?
also I hadn't really planned it this way, but I actually think that shaving my head was kind of the perfect thing to do because we've touched on like endometriosis makes you feel like you're not yourself anymore and like you have no control over your body and it just decides what you're going to do and you're like this is not who I am. I'm a person that does a lot of sport and that's really active and that's really fit and it's so funny because I actually still struggle with that. Like if someone directly asked me, "Are you active?" I'd be like, "Yeah. Oh yeah." But in reality, I don't really do much exercise anymore.
Mm.
I mean, I was saying to Jess, I went swimming this morning, which was amazing, swimming in the
Oh,
sea with like this group of incredible people that always go. Anyway, so that was great. But it's like on a day-to-day basis, I used to play squash every day and I don't, and I probably couldn't.
yeah.
Um,
Because
so
I
there's this
remember
real
you at school being very
yeah,
sporty in that way. Like, you were
yeah.
enviably sporty. And the thing is, it's, as adults, there's some stuff you sort of go, I can't. I would definitely agree. Like, I can't do. I used to cheer, so I used to be a
Yeah,
cheerleader, and I had to stop in the run up to my surgery because I just couldn't do it anymore.
yeah.
Like, there were a number of reasons where I was also like, no, like, this is for. I don't do well being told what to do, which sort of removes me from some team things. But it was also getting to the point where like I couldn't. I used to be very flexible and do a lot of yoga. I couldn't do that anymore.
Mm,
And as you say, it takes over your body, and you're like,
yeah,
this is not me. So
yeah,
shaving your head was your moment of moving on, was
yeah.
it?
Yeah, like reclaiming and just deciding this is what I want to do and I don't care. Because also I was really struggling for a while with like the whole clothing thing and like I like looking nice and I felt like I couldn't look the way I wanted to look because I couldn't wear like things that are tight at your waist. That's what I
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And so shaving my head really felt like who cares what society thinks? Who cares what a woman should be? Like nobody's listening, nobody cares anyway. I'm just going to do whatever I want and like claim back who I am and not like
Yeah.
reinvent myself, but just give myself that fresh start. And it felt so liberating because honestly, I don't know that a shaved head looked that good on me. Like if you're objectively like, when have I looked the prettiest? I don't think it was then, but I loved it.
I
I
think you
loved it
looked the
because
most
of,
you. You
yeah,
looked
and it's
like
just
empowered. I
it
loved
was
it.
right at the time. It was so easy to look after. It was so like people treated me differently and I really liked feeling seen, I think,
Yeah.
from it.
And just
Yeah.
going, this is like, I think sometimes it's about making that decision to
Yeah.
go, I have been at the mercy of this for so long that I want to do something for me. I think
Yeah.
I had a big moment when, because my surgery recovery was weird, like it did take quite a while, and like I wasn't myself for a while. And then I remember in like the October, it was just before Adam and I went on holiday, and my scars were still quite visible.
Mm.
And I am somebody who, particularly in the summer, I am at my happiest wearing as little as possible. I am so like,
Same.
it's not in an exhibitionist way. I'm just comfortable. I'm happy. I
Yeah.
love wearing swimwear. I love like, shorts and like, it's a vibe, but I hadn't felt comfortable showing my stomach, which I've always felt fine with. Because, if anything, I'm not big on my thighs, but I've always had a fairly flat stomach. And I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's go. And it was a big thing on that holiday going, I have to wear swimwear. And then I went, do you know
Mm.
what? Fuck it. Like I don't care. This is happening. And we
Yeah.
took loads of photos. And there is a photo from that holiday I still look at and I go, yes, yes, I am just
Really.
living my best life there. We are having
Yeah.
such a laugh. We're having so much fun. And it was like, I'm not in pain anymore. And
Yeah.
my body is mine
Yeah.
rather than me being it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, or
Yeah.
the moment, like I remember on my year anniversary, I got kidney stones,
Oh
and the
God.
GP was like, "Oh, it kind of sounds like period pain." It's like, do not even. But it was a locum GP on a Saturday morning, and he went, "Well, I'm going to send you to A&E just in case because you've had a history of endometriosis." And in my head, I was like, "Whatever, I don't care as long as I'm going there." And I met
Yeah.
an endometriosis consultant who given to me, and he was like, "How bad is it?" And I was like, "One of the worst things I've ever experienced." And he was like, "Well, given the pain threshold, I assume you have. I'm going to go with kidney stones."
Yeah.
It was such a laugh. But I got one of those intra scans and they did a lot of stuff, and he's like, I can't see anything I'm concerned about. And I was like, it was such a day. I was like, even though
Yeah.
it was in lockdown, I was like, I need to do something to celebrate today. Like,
Yeah.
it's weird the things you value, I think, afterwards, where
Yeah.
it's just like, or like sometimes on my period I still don't take painkillers. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm fine.
Same.
But it's so
Yeah.
weird because you're like, I actually don't really need to. Like, it's
Yeah.
sore, but
Yeah.
I'm not on the cocktail I used to be on. Like,
Yeah.
I almost don't want to
Yeah.
anymore. I'm like, nah, you know,
Yeah.
it's how it should be. So
Yeah.
I like to round these off with, if you could shout one thing from the rooftops about endometriosis, if you could tell everybody one thing, whether
Hmm.
it's your experience, whether it's encouraging others to, what would be your thing that you'd want people to know?
My thing would be, your body. So to the person that thinks they might have it, your body, something is wrong. Whether it's endometriosis or not isn't important. The important thing is that if you think something is wrong, then it is. And you just have to figure out what it is. And it's annoying and difficult. But I think it's really important to be able to come back to that knowledge and that inner trust in yourself that, like, I'm not making this up. I'm not pretending. I'm not lazy. There is something wrong with my body internally. And then to the people supporting someone that thinks they might have it or that have symptoms that you're a bit confused about, believe people when they say that they're ill. Nobody says that. People are not attention seekers. If someone says that they're like so fatigued that they can't shower, why would they lie about that? And so I think it's just believe in yourself and believe in other people when they tell you that something is wrong.
And to add to that, particularly if you are one of the people who is delaying seeking treatment, whether you think it's just your period or whether you're like, oh, well, I don't feel like me, but it's fine. It's not fine.
Mm,
You deserve to feel like you. And
yeah.
frankly, doctors are there to help you find out what's wrong with you. You're not being a
Yeah.
bother. You are not being a problem. You are seeking pain and like you're seeking relief. You're
Yeah.
seeking the ability to, we will believe you. There is a wonderful community of endometriosis people. But as Sophia rightly says,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's endometriosis or not. It matters about finding a way to make you better.
Yeah.
And you're not a failure as a woman, because I've seen this comment before. You are not a failure as anything, a woman, a person with a uterus, anything. You are not failing by seeking help, because for all you know, the people around you who are like, oh, periods aren't that bad, like have no periods, or they have tiny
Yeah.
usually. God, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago on one of the lives, where there are some people in the comments who are like, yeah, my sister doesn't even notice she's on her period. Ignore those people. Their experience is
Yeah.
not relevant to yours. You know you, but you're not a bother.
Yeah.
You know, would you say that like the people around you, have you had supportive people who did believe your experience, or was it a bit of a struggle to get everyone to understand?
I really have. It was a bit of a struggle at first, and I think it really didn't help for me that it happened during lockdown. And so really the only person that was seeing me was my ex. He also had really bad asthma, so he was like really high risk for COVID. And so we spent 2 full years just in the same house together, seeing nobody. And so I
Yeah.
think there were a lot of people in my life that wanted to be supportive, but didn't really understand what I was talking about because it's quite hard to explain. And so I do
Yes.
think for me, having the diagnosis really helped with that because I was like, here's a word, you can Google it.
Definitely. I mean, for me, I found, and it's nothing against them, my parents did not know what to do with this information
No.
at all. But one of the most supportive people, apart from obviously Adam, who has been phenomenal. I adore this man. He is fantastic. But the level of support he has given me is, I
Yeah.
literally couldn't have done it without him. But the other person who really surprised me was my grandma. My grandma was so like,
Really?
yeah, she is, and she's so supportive of Say Yellow for Endo as well. She is,
Yeah.
because we think she had endometriosis, we reckon, but she used
Yeah.
to be in agony, and she was like, in my day, you literally couldn't talk about this. So she was like, you talk about it, you shout about this,
That's so
because
great.
she's like, I wasn't allowed to. And I was like,
Yeah.
it was the weirdest thing because I just didn't expect it at all.
Yeah.
My grandma is like, she is an archetypal grandma. She's wonderful and she's quite proper, and she bakes and she sews and she knits and she's wonderful. But it was such a surprise to have that conversation as well. Like Adam's grandma, she told her the surgery I was having, and she went, "Oh, I had to have a hysterectomy for endometriosis." None of the family knew.
Really?
Yeah, just came up in conversation, and it was just this wonderful thing where it was like, this campaign, Say Hello for Endo, is not just for young people. It is for everybody. I've
Yeah.
like, whether you're 16, you've had a hysterectomy, but after years of agony, or you're in your 20s like us, and you found it young, maybe you had to battle for it. This space is for all of us,
Mm.
and it's about menstrual health as well. Like,
Yeah.
what would you say? Like, I mean, we had similar schoolings. I don't remember a
Yeah.
huge amount about menstrual health. I remember being taught what a period was in terms of biology.
Yeah.
No, like
It's
menstrual health
also
stuff.
so for the context of people watching, I grew up in Greece and Athens, went to school there, and then when I was 16, I went to the same boarding school as Jess, but I was only there for A levels. So I didn't at that school, I don't think that I did any kind of like health stuff because it had already been covered. And
I
Greece
mean,
is
saying it's already
Greece
been
is
covered, I was there 5 years, and
yeah, I
not really
assumed.
me.
I assumed. um
But in
in
Greece,
Greece is quite traditional still. And so I don't know what it's like here, and I'm sure it's not great here either, but it was very, like, I remember in biology, all we did was look at like diagrams. And I actually really, really clearly remember, on a kind of side note, that when I got to our boarding school, I like knew what sex was in theory because I'd been shown the diagrams. Nobody had ever shown me like the outside of someone's body and how it worked. And I remember being like, I know this is stupid, but like, I don't get it. Because all I'd ever seen was like where they show you all of people's organs on the inside of their body. I was like, that's not helpful. Like
but
it's good
this is
knowledge, but
true
it's not
though.
going to help me practically.
But also the big one is that you always get shown, and I apologize, guys. I rant about this constantly, so just bear with me. You only get shown the little uterus diagram. You never see the cross section of people's pelvises. And
Yeah,
so once you do, for a lot of women, you go, oh, that explains
yeah,
why my pain is here and pain is there. But the other thing is
yeah,
your organs move around, you know? Like,
yeah.
your ovaries don't stick out rigidly to the side. I mean, I always say this because I find it hilarious. One of my ovaries sits on top of my uterus like a hat. And it's like they do this. They're like, I'm a little teapot, which is brilliant. But once you know stuff moves around, like it's not this
Yeah,
rigid diagram of this is a woman and reducing us to a uterus. It's not like,
yeah,
there's so much
yeah,
more. And like menstrual
yeah.
health is now mandatory to teach in schools though. That was
Oh, that's
the big
good.
victory last year. I don't know
Wow.
by what year it has to
Yeah,
be in everywhere, but it is now mandatory. But I don't know what it looks
yeah,
like and what teaching menstrual health looks like now.
yeah. Yeah, because I do think you're right. I'm honestly not sure I knew anything about my cycle until I got endometriosis. Like I couldn't have told you I I had pain at ovulation, but I don't think that I even knew that I was ovulating at that point.
So it was just mystery pain
It
rather
was
than
just
knowing.
like my cycle to me was like period, month of nothing, period.
So
And it's
a
like that's not what it is.
recommendation, and actually a mutual friend of ours, Holly, who
Yeah.
has done this the last 2 years with me. Me and Holly have used the same period tracking app since school. So I
Yeah.
massively recommend Clue. It is really good and it's free
I
and you
use
can use it.
Clue.
Clue is great, right? And they
Yeah.
did an update recently where there's now loads of extra options, which is
Yeah.
awesome because it's been the same ones for like 10 years.
Yeah.
But period tracking apps, use them because they
Yeah.
really help as well when you go to the doctors and
Yeah.
you can say, I have this
Yeah.
period at this point, and this is when my period is. Coincidence?
Yeah. Honestly, when they ask you when was your last period, and then they like seem annoyed when you get your phone out, I'm like, I don't know off the top of my head. I
Yeah,
have to
unless
check.
I'm on it now, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's only
Period
a
tracking
few I
apps
can
are great.
remember. Yeah, seriously, and that would be a big recommendation as well. Like, if you are in the diagnosis period,
Yeah.
the diagnosis window, being able to
Yeah.
use and point to a period tracker app and going, because you can
Yeah.
record pain and other stuff as well, and like
Yeah,
constipation.
nausea, bloating, skin differences. Like that was how I proved that it wasn't IBS because of doing all of the food tests and being like, no matter what I eat, my issue was I had endometriosis around my stomach. And so anytime that I ate anything, if my stomach tried to move, it would hurt. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's scarring or what. I definitely still have those symptoms now at times. And my
Mhm.
safe foods are like make no sense. Like Coke is really helpful for just like a reason that nobody can explain.
But it is weird. There's stuff like that where you just go, I don't know why it works,
Yeah.
but it does. And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna question it.
It's better than
We're just gonna go with
medication.
it. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like I am not embarrassed to say that because of my physio, I still have to use laxatives. Not
Mm.
constantly, but when I ovulate, because it doesn't matter what I eat. That's
Yeah.
just part of ovulation for me. But I know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So instead of going, oh God, this is so uncomfortable, I go, I'm ovulating. Hooray, this is a thing. Now,
Yeah.
we have been chatting for ages. It has been such a joy. Thank you so much, Sophia, for joining us. Remember, there are a few more days of So Yellow for Endo left, so please do consider giving and giving generously to help us reach our target and our little stretch target of 1,200. But thank you so much, Sophia. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've had a great time, and we'd
I've
love to speak again
loved it.
soon.
It's been so
Hooray!
great. And yeah, talk to people, guys, because it's really helpful. It's really, you
Yeah,
feel so seen.
absolutely. And the thing is, this is what we want to do. Anyone across this month, any live you've listened to where you go, their experiences like mine, or the last few years, message those people. They're all very happy to speak to
Yeah.
you. I'm volunteering you here, but
No, I'm not for it.
generally we are, because we want to, my experience might not reflect yours, but Sophia's might reflect yours, or
Yeah.
Laura's a few weeks ago might reflect yours, or Kim's last year and the year before might, or if you find someone with a similar experience and you want to talk to them, please do.
Mhm.
If we have one thing, fundraising aside, serving yellow aside, if you come out of this month with one thing, it's I want you to be able to talk openly about your period and to not feel any kind of shame doing so.
Yeah.
Because there's no shame. We want to know about it. Half the population have them. It should,
Mm.
people should not be able to talk about their ingrowing toenails on the train, but not talk about periods. Like,
Yeah.
like we kind of go, oh, this is a bit gross, but fine. With periods, for some reason, people around you just turn white and shuffle away, and you go, no,
Yeah.
right. There is no shame at
Yeah.
all. Thank you so much, Sophia. And hopefully we can do this again at some point because this was really fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank
and
you.
we will see you guys, well, next year for So Yellow for Endo. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you next time.